3. The present perfect tense. Its subject plus has or have plus the past participle. Examples of past participle for irregular past tense verbs. Be, was, were. Past participle is been. Become, became, become. These are all irregular because the past tense form is different from the simple form. Okay. Begin, began, begun. Blow, blew, blown. Okay. This is how we use the past participle. So you have to have the subject like I, you, etc. plus the has or have verb, then the past participle. There are two forms, singular, plural form. Let's try some singular form. I, the subject, have is the supporting verb, lived is the main verb. Right? Lived is the past participle of live. Live, lived, lived. This is a regular verb. This is not irregular verb. Okay, this is a regular verb. So you add only ed as a past participle. Okay, remember you add only ed at the end for regular verbs. I have lived. You is the subject, have lived. You have lived. He has lived. She has lived. It has lived. The plural form, we have lived. You have lived. Right? He, she, it becomes they have lived. Okay? So this is the way. The present perfect is used for 3 reasons. Number 1, to describe an action that goes from the past up to the present moment. Okay? To describe an action that occurred sometime in the past, but the exact time is unknown. To describe an action that was repeated many times in the past. So these are the 3 reasons. First, describe an action that goes from the past to the present. Action that occurred sometime in the past. An action that was repeated many times. Okay, remember the 3 steps. Let's see some example. I have lived in Minnesota for 15 years. Have lived is the present perfect tense. Okay. I have lived in Minnesota or Mumbai for 15 years. I have lived here since 1991. That occurred in the past, right? You have heard the song before. You have heard the song before. She has cleaned her bathroom twice this week. Time, okay? Repeated time. So we use the present perfect form. She has cleaned. You and have go together, right? She has cleaned. Don't confuse the present perfect with past tense. Okay? The present perfect is used with unspecified periods of time in the past or to show the passage of time. Okay? Here is an example of a mistake. She has cleaned her bathroom yesterday. This mistake specifies when she did something which you can only do with the past tense. Look, here is the correction how you should use. She cleaned her bathroom yesterday. Should not use has cleaned. You should use she cleaned her bathroom yesterday. Use directly a past tense, not past present perfect. This is present perfect. Okay, this is not used to denote a past tense. That is what said here. Don't confuse the present perfect with the past tense. The present perfect is used with unspecified period of time in the past or to show the passage of time. Okay, now relook at it. I have lived in Minnesota. It's not about past tense. Okay, it is about how it's specifying the time period. Okay, I have lived. It doesn't talk about I have lived as a past tense connotation. Okay, you have heard this song before. Have heard. Okay, so it's before you should note. Instead of saying yesterday, you have heard this song. Yesterday means it's different. Okay, here in this we have since. There is no specific period. Okay, yesterday, today, that means they are present, past tense or present tense, right? She has cleaned their bathroom twice this week. Okay, they are not talking about she has cleaned their bathroom yesterday. Okay, that is what has been mentioned here. Okay, when you say yesterday, it is about past tense. When you say it is twice this week, it is about some passage of time. Before, unspecified time. When, okay, remember this trick. Sometimes people learning English use the past tense when they should use the present perfect. Let's take an example where we use past tense instead of the present perfect. Okay, it is example 1. Here is the example of 3 common mistakes. Please make a note. I lived in Minnesota or Mumbai for 10 years. I lived in Minnesota for 10 years. Okay, but it sounds like he is no longer there and lives in another place. Okay, so when you use lived, it shows that you are no more there. You are using past tense. Here, I am living in Minnesota 10 years. Wrong. I am living in Minnesota 10 years. I live in Minnesota 10 years. Wrong. Basically, this person wants to say that he moved to Minnesota 10 years ago and is still there. In this case, the present perfect is a good choice. I have lived in Minnesota for 10 years. Look, instead of I lived in Minnesota or I am living or I live in Minnesota for 10 years, etc., we rather use I have lived in Minnesota for 10 years. Have lived is the present perfect. This will denote not the time past tense or the tense portion, but it specifies the time period or passage of time. Or I have lived in Minnesota since 1996. Have lived is a healthy choice. Okay. Notice also that for and since are often used in the present perfect. Okay, that is for and since are always used. For is used with numbers of days like weeks, months, years, centuries, days, etc. And since is used with specified days. Since 1991, since January, since 10 years, like that. Okay, for and since. To make the negative, all we have to do is add not to the has or have verb. Okay, that is before using the contraction. I have not, I haven't lived, you haven't lived, he hasn't lived, she hasn't lived, he has not lived. We have the contraction hasn't. Okay, apostrophe in between the N and the T is to be noted, okay? So that gives an N. Affirmative contractions. I've lived. You've lived. He's lived. She's lived. It's lived. We've lived. You've lived. They've lived. One more thing about the present perfective is, sometimes if you have had or have as the main verb, okay, you will be having have, had, or two times the same verb to denote a present perfect tense, okay. For example, if you are using I have had the same car for 10 years is one example of using have as the main verb. The past tense form, past participle form is had. I have had, right? So this is one way of using the past participle form. That is, the helping verb is have here. The main verb is had. That is the past participle. Okay. When these two come together, it's have had. So it looks like you have to have very close by. It's okay. Okay. Let's see one more example. Okay. For a negative form, I haven't had anything. The form is I haven't had anything to eat this morning. It's a negative form. I haven't had anything, right? So you simply add and constrict not with the helping verb. Okay. Let's do this exercise for the present perfect. Okay. Subject plus has or have plus the past participle. The clues are given in the brackets. Okay, use it and figure out the answer. Pause the video and fill in the blanks. Section B, exercise B, negative statements. The previous one is an affirmative statement. Okay, so here is the final answers. We are going to give you the answers now. Oh yeah, here we go. Pause the video and check these answers with your test, and please read the questions aloud and the answers aloud. Practice it many times. Okay, good job.